Okay, this is a final view of the complete project, just so you can see what it's going to be like when it's completely done. Okay, I really want you to watch this whole thing just so you can see how all the parts line up and what is expected for you to have completed when you hand in your final podcast. All right, so here we go.
Welcome to Mrs. Peters' Perfectly Positive podcast, where together we will meet people who positively impact others. I'm your host, Erin Peters. Today you'll get to know Mr. Jeffrey Peters, band teacher and creator and instructor of the interactive band course now in its third year. Mr. Peters grew up in Midland Park and took his first music lessons as a student at Highland School, where he's now an educator and has been for 13 years. Over the course of his time at Highland, he's led the 4th grade beginner band, 5th and 6th grade advanced band, and the jazz band. In addition to conducting and teaching lessons to his band students, Mr. Peters has also made huge strides in improving their rehearsal and performance space. So I believe Mr. Peters to be an integral part of the Highland School and Midland Park communities and someone who has positively impacted others. Welcome to the studio, Mr. Peters.
Hello.
I'd love it if in your own words you would tell the listeners and me a little about yourself in and out of your roles in the Midland Park community. I know you have a dog, you like to be outside, and you're involved in a few activities in the district. Can you share a bit about some of the things you like to do and are part of?
Well, outside of school, I like to hang out with my dog and go on hikes and take her to play frisbee. Rosie and I have a lot of fun together. And I like to go rock climbing with my brothers and my wife, you. um, and I like to go to the beach and stuff like that. And then as far as in school, I'm involved with the marching band and the jazz band, and I coach middle school cross country and spring track. Um, and yeah, I think that's it.
You do the AV club too, right? Which keeps you involved with the 6th grade musical and the talent show.
Yeah, I mean, it's not really called an AV club, but it's more of a stage crew thing. That's just more for the musical. But yeah, we do like the sound and the lights for the musical, and I do them for all the assemblies and also for the talent show.
Excellent. I also have the tree lighting on my list.
Oh yeah, I do the tree lighting also.
Yeah, you do lots of stuff.
Yeah.
What's your favorite part about being a band teacher?
I like that it's never boring. It's definitely always an adventure every day. Every day is different. And it keeps it interesting from day to day.
Do you feel like you have high expectations of your students? And if so, tell us why that's a good thing.
Yeah, I mean, I guess they're high. Um, I try to push the students to do the best that they possibly can, and try to push them a little bit beyond what they think they're capable of doing, and then that usually ends up having good results where they feel like they've accomplished something, and feel like they kind of maybe did something that they didn't know they were maybe capable of doing before we started the activity.
Yeah, it's a source of pride, right? When you
Yeah,
can
for everybody.
overcome a
Yep.
challenge.
Yeah, exactly.
Sure. So, for many years, you taught recorder to third grade students as an introduction to playing an instrument. Why did you decide it was time to leave the recorder behind and create the sixth grade interactive band class?
Well, there were multiple reasons. The main one being I did not totally feel that the recorder was serving the purpose that it originally was intended. I talked with a lot of colleagues and went to a lot of conferences and stuff, and kind of learned that the East Coast was really one of the only places that started students on band instruments even in fourth grade. Apparently, the West Coast was they were putting out really, really talented musicians, and people on the East Coast, like way back in like the 40s and 50s, thought, well, let's get a leg up and start kids on instruments earlier without doing any real research. So, and it turns out like it doesn't really seem to get them any further ahead, because the musicians in the Midwest are still kind of kicking our butts in that regard. So I thought it was kind of time for a change and try to get things ahead with the times. So I decided to try to come up with an idea for a different kind of class. So we stopped recorder, and now you can just join band in fourth grade. And there really hasn't been any slowdown as far as the skill level of the students. So then we came up with this music technology class that we do, and it's kind of been evolving for the last few years, ever since.
It seems to have a good reception, right?
I
Your
think so.
students like it?
I think so. They seem to.
It sounds like it to me. I like it. In my introduction, I mentioned your work to improve the rehearsal and performance space at Highland School. Can you tell us a little about the Raise the Current campaign you started and what it's accomplished for your students and what might be in store for the future?
Well, so I started the Raise the Curtain campaign. Boy, I don't even know how long ago it was now. Maybe been 5 or 6 years ago, when Miss Beisch was the principal. And we started it because they had done the addition on Highland School, the new gym and auditorium, but ended up not having enough money to do everything that we wanted them to do. So we started raising money to buy a curtain, and then I worked with the current music teacher at the time to come up with like a list of like what we felt like we needed, and then when Miss Angulo Pizarro came, we kind of fine-tuned that a little bit. So since we started, we've purchased a curtain for the stage. That was the first thing. We got a sound system for the auditorium. We purchased new lights and a lighting system. We added on to the current one and made the lighting system wireless so I can control it with an iPad. And we're currently trying to get sound panels for the gym to kind of absorb some of the sound so that the giant concrete box that it is will be less echoey, and it'll help for our concerts, but also for gym class and all the other things that happen in there. It'll kind of quiet down the room a little bit.
Sounds good. All right, last question. Do you feel like you've started to successfully change the community around you?
I mean, I guess I'd like to hope that I have, but I couldn't really say that for sure. I guess you'd have to ask other people. I mean, I guess that's kind of what I'm aiming to do, being that I grew up in Midland Park. I have, I guess, a special sense of responsibility to leave things better than I found them, more than maybe other people who didn't grow up in the school system and didn't know like what it was when I grew up and what it is now and the difference between the two. And I have a vision of where I'd like it to be, so I guess the answer would be yes.
The answer is yes. Absolutely yes. I have a note that says to make sure you're not too
okay.
humble. All right. That was it. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
It is my hope that by this time it's evident that Mr. Peters is no ordinary person. Inspired by a soft spot for his hometown, he doesn't settle for the mundane and the mediocre and expects the same from his students. I found that Mr. Peters is an exceptional role model, and I really feel like maybe we should try to be a little more like him by being enthusiastic for our work and visualizing what could use some improvement and taking the steps to make these improvements happen. He indeed raises the bar, just as he has raised the curtain. My thanks go to Mr. Peters for giving us so much of his time during this very busy marching band season, and to Rosie the Poodle for not barking during the recording. This is Mrs. Peters bringing to you Mrs. Peters' Perfectly Positive Podcast. Now go forth and be humble, be kind, and work hard.